Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. Before we begin, remember, Play Noir is back. Film noir style one-act plays written by playwrights from around the world. We are now accepting submissions through May 31st. If you would have one under your belt already, please submit it. Or look for guidelines at www.punkmonkeyproductions.com. Submissions can be accepted through info@punkmonkeyproductions.com. And if you need examples of what a good film noir styled one-act play looks like, Film Noir Anthology is available. 41 film noir styled one-act plays written from playwrights around the world, like I already said, available on Amazon, Walmart, and BarnesandNoble.com. My guest today is a playwright and award-winning producer and director who has had the privilege of collaborating on the premieres of Tim Blake Nelson's Eye of God, Christopher Durang's The Vietnamization of New Jersey. I'm surprised I actually got through it and still think I pronounced it wrong. David Crawford's Harvest, Bennett Windheim's Normalcy, Megan O'Brien's The Jungle Book, Daniel MacIvor's The Soldier Dreams, and Devil in the Deep Blue Sea with Air Supply's Graham Russell. He serves on the board of directors for Texas Dramatists, is a member of Actors Equity and SAG-AFTRA, and an instructor at the Kanbar Institute of Film and Television, Tisch School of the Arts, NYU, and the Stella Adler Studio of Acting. His play Canaan Unremembered opened March 24th at the Court Square Theater in Long Island City, New York, and runs through April 19th, 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Judson Jones. Did I say hello? Hello. Should I pronounce your play right? Canaan?
Yes, Canaan.
Okay. So quite the biography, and I don't want to be presumptuous, but I'm going to assume it's not. This is not your first play that you've written?
It is my first full-length play that I've written. It is.
Okay.
I have worked with many playwrights on developing plays.
Sure.
Have many years doing that, but it is the first time that I have written a full length.
Having that experience or that background, let's unpack that. Let's talk about how developing your own. Did you find any obstacles flying solo?
Some. I mean, part of what I knew from being in the room with playwrights, of one, how to work the text, we're going to try everything before we jump into changing the text. And then, because as a director working with playwrights, my ear is open to what actors are doing and can sense this isn't working. And also trust actors enough to ask, tell me about this moment. What's happening? You keep tripping up here. There's a reason for that. And I want to find out what that is. And so, I don't think anything more than the usual obstacles. The only difficulty for me was when to devote time. I wanted to rewrite all the time. I've had to stop. I have to allow the text to work and look at this as something that I'm directing, and then go home, look at my notes, and then figure out from a playwriting standpoint what to move there.
Was that rewrite that urge to rewrite? Was that coming from a place of insecurity? It was just like,
I think so. Truthfully, yeah, absolutely. Especially when you have gifted actors with you, they're doing everything,
right?
And so then, if something isn't working, that what is wrong? What did I do? And then realizing, often just the slightest change in direction, then all of a sudden resolves that. A wonderfully worded specific question from an actor about a line, about a moment, that moment of clarity, then can change everything.
Sure. With your pedigree, do you think that there was an element of imposter syndrome, that maybe I don't know what I'm doing, even though you really do?
Absolutely. Well, when we workshopped this, we were very fortunate to be invited up to Powerhouse Theater, Vassar College, given a workshop for this. And there are some fabulous playwrights that have brought their work up to Powerhouse. And then, put in front of a crowd of around 200 people, including writers, directors, that absolutely, I was at the furthest corner of the room, covering myself. That, there is absolutely that feeling of imposter syndrome.
So you mentioned getting questions from your actors, because you're writing and directing, which people have been following the podcast know my opinion about that. But I think that's mostly for unestablished writers and directors. That being said, because I know that sometimes when you get into a flow state, in my experience directing and producing, sometimes you get questions, especially if the playwright's around, where it's just like, I don't know where that came from. The playwright will say, I don't know. I don't know where you're asking a question that I'm not even aware of where that came from, because you get in a flow state. And so they'll be like, they'll redirect to, when I was directing, redirect to me, the director.
Right.
Go ask James, he's directing, because I don't know. Now, right. You're wearing both hats.
Right.
So how do you approach that if you did indeed get into that flow state yourself, where it's like, I don't know where that came from. I'm not sure what it means. It's just what came out. I mean, did you find that experience yourself, or I'm curious.
Yeah, it's something I tell my directing students, that sometimes the best answer is I don't know. That's okay. We're going to explore it. We will find it. Often that, knowing what actors bring to it, then sometimes that question of what do you think?
Right.
What does that mean to you? I know, and I can honestly say when I wrote it, there was a purpose for it. Trying to think of what that purpose was now.
Right, sure.
But there's something about trusting that what is the actor bringing to it, will we find it? I also, as a director, often when actors have questions and like the playwright comes to the room, I have so many questions for you, that I will urge the playwright, you don't have to answer everything.
Sure. Right.
The idea of, whether it is the director or the playwright as an answer giver, I'm going to be more of a purveyor of questions for you.
I would say that, if there's two things I want to tackle in that statement, because and maybe some actors aren't aware of it, but there's a sense of overstepping. So for all you actors out there, if you have the opportunity to work alongside the playwright and the director, the director's the first person you go to, and don't overstep, because I don't know, maybe I'm incorrect about that, but I just feel like it's like the directors, don't, if the director's giving you a direction and the playwright hasn't corrected that and say, that's not my intention, then you shouldn't be approaching the playwright. I don't know. Am I?
Well,
I think
that there's something, and those it's interesting working with playwrights like Christopher Durang, like Tim Blake Nelson, playwrights that, or even David Crawford, who have 10 plays, 20 plays. I mean, Durang does such a career. That those playwrights understand this is no longer my play. This is an interpretation of my play. And so when they come into rehearsals, I remember Tim coming to dress rehearsal, I think, and afterwards went out and had his legal pad out and had like 5 pages of notes. And then at the end of it, said, but this isn't my play. I'm not producing it, I'm not directing it. So here are my thoughts. You get to take what you want from it. And I think those playwrights who fully understand that you're giving this work and entrusting it, and you're going to see things that you love. I've sat next to playwrights at their shows and who have hated the choices that are being made, but you're giving that away. That's part of the collaborative process, and it's part of the trusting process. So, you know, for me as a director, and you know, wanting to collaborate with the playwright, but sometimes there's that introduction to an idea that the playwright didn't have. Even from the acting standpoint of sitting in auditions, and a playwright leans over and says, "I didn't write that." The actor introduced something to me I didn't know was in my play. And for me, that is the beautiful part of collaboration, is that, you know, from a directing standpoint, yes, if it is a play that I'm working on that I haven't written, I've read it 100 times before we enter the process. And yet an actor is going to introduce something. It's going to show me something I didn't know was there. And that's what I'm counting on. And so, you know, from the playwriting standpoint, to be introduced, and all of a sudden, sometimes those rewrites are, I didn't know that was a possibility. You introduced that possibility. I want to explore that a little more.
Does that turn into doing for you? Does that turn into doing rewrites?
It can, you know, and then there's also those moments of like, this is another play of like that. I love that. I'm gonna write a note about that. Right. It doesn't fit into this world, but that's a brilliant story.
But and do you let but does that, at that moment, does that interpretation still fit, and do you let it? Do you let it foster, or do you say, I appreciate that, I didn't interpret that way, but I really want to stick to the original intention, but yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. You know, I think that ultimately, you know, we have these arcs of, this is the story I'm wanting to tell. Does this fit in with that? Right. And that's a brilliant thing you're bringing into it. But as you said, that isn't the story I'm telling here. Right. And sometimes it's even, I love that impulse. I love that. Keep that inside. That's a great, we're not going to show that story. If that feeds this moment, and continues to propel this story that we're doing, right? But you know, there are only so many things that we can do, and while wanting to tackle a wide breadth of issues, that we have limited time, and so I'm always thankful. Let's try this. Let's make this the focus. Right.
And that's coming from a directorial point of view or a playwriting point of view, or both?
It can be. I mean, I've definitely done that as a director working with a playwright. Okay. I've, you know, part of the kind of questioning I do of myself from a playwriting standpoint is there can be an impulsive, no, I don't like that. And then asking myself, is that hubris at all? Is that just, you know, I really like my words? Right. Or is it something else? And if it's something else, I want to explore it. I want to make sure it's just not ego. I've found myself through the process, and the actors at least seem to be appreciative of not having, not being precious with the words. I find myself, able to say, "Do you need to say that?" Or are you experiencing that enough? Do we need to show the audience? I don't know if we need to show that. Let's cut it.
Right.
What you're doing is enough.
Do you find that there's a conflict that that doing both gets in the way? Like that the playwright in you, kind of gets like you said, like ego gets in the way. It's like, but then you've got the director side of you.
I think
there's a conflict between the two.
Yeah, I think that there can be a wrestling match. Absolutely. In terms of James, I'm really trying to. Is there? I guess it's that. My question would be: I don't know if I find that conflict necessarily bad.
Okay. Sure.
That I can find it as metal sharpening metal in terms of the director brain fighting with the playwright brain. And if done honestly, what will that outcome be?
Right.
And realizing that also correcting a writing issue with directing. No, I'm not gonna do that. If there is a textual problem, that's gonna be, I'm gonna resolve it that way.
Right.
Versus trying to direct or act or light or design my way out of it. I don't know if that answers.
No, yeah. With your experience now, what is the majority of your experience? Is it mostly film and television, or is it mostly stage?
It's mostly stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason why I ask is I'm curious of what that transition was. If you really came into a place, because I think it's personally, I think it's better to go from to start on with a stage experience, transition into film and television, opposed to, because the mediums are different. Whether that's performance, directing, certainly writing. I think a lot of beginning writers usually they automatically write from a television film where there's 15 locations within the first 5 pages, if you will, and a lot of things are hard to stage. So I was just curious if you had that. So, all right, well, that's good. That's good to know. So where did you start out? I want to kind of get to know a little bit more about your journey into playwriting, coming from a collaborative aspect of directing, and then saying, okay, now I'm going to write. I'm going to take this. I don't know if it's a leap. I don't know, maybe it was for you.
Yeah. Started, over 20 years ago, working with playwrights. I've always, I love new plays. I think that playwrights are our lifeblood. And there's something about, while I love, my goodness, you give me some good Arthur Miller, some Sam Shepard, some Clifford Odets, Edward Albee, absolutely love them. But there's something about being in the room, and something that did not exist, however many months ago. Now it's a cast, now with designers, we have this thing. And doing that for many years, and working on, I guess, script doctoring, I don't know. of really one playwright, David Crawford, would call me his abortionist because I'd be like, I don't know. I want to talk about this character. I don't know what this character brings. And so we would go through workshops where I would start killing off his characters. And something that Durang once talked about, which I absolutely believe, I found myself in this, that sometimes you will cut your favorite scene of a play because you realize it no longer works there. It's meant for another script somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
But you have to make these incredibly painful cuts because it's no longer part of the story you're telling. So, for me, years of working with playwrights, always loving that process. And then a few years ago, I had an idea. And it was the question, because of knowing playwrights, I reached out. I know people who've commissioned the playwrights of, hey, I have an idea. I want you to write this show. And the more I was researching and taking notes, of listening to the voices of these characters and wanting to give these voices a space. And at first it was just the idea of, I'm going to give these voices a space through a script, and I don't know what's going to happen with that. And then we've had a relationship with Powerhouse and asked what we were working on next and if we want to bring something up. And my wife knew I worked best with a deadline and said, we're going to bring this up. And I was like, okay, well, then that means I have to finish it. Thank you so much. And that put just a date on it. And then just started. I tend to work from a place of post-it notes of like, here's what happens in this scene, and then here's what happens, and moving those around until I have the story, and now I'm going to write this scene. And so that was my journey into it. Was I have these voices in my head.
Sure.
And they're not going to leave me alone.
How elaborate are those post-it notes? Or how simple are they? Either way, I mean, like how much detail is like
it will be like, here's what's resolved. Here is the conflict that's presented in this scene, and I know it's between this person and this person, and here is the resolution. Here's the failure that both characters fail to get this resolved. It either carries through, is abandoned. Here is and therefore it moves to this next scene.
So would that be, for example, I'm just, you got one post-it note, you get Jack and you got Jill. Jack and Jill are in need of water. So they grab a bucket and hike up the hill. That's one post-it note.
Sure.
The next post-it note would be they make it, they fill the pail and then they fall. I'm just trying to, yeah.
No, and then sometimes that thing of they fill the pail and lightning strikes when they're on the mountaintop of where we thought we were going.
Okay.
Martha Graham, not Martha Graham, Marcia Norman talked about very different that how she felt like a play was that announcement that you get when you get on a plane that says, this is the captain speaking, we're headed to the Bahamas and we're going to have a lovely time, and we'll let you know when we hit 30,000 feet. And you're like, okay, so that's where we're going. And then all of a sudden there are some bumps and the pilot gets on and says, all right, so change. We thought we were going here and now we're not. We have hit some unexpected turbulence along the way. And so that idea of here's where we're going, and yeah, that would be nice. Something happened along the way. If it was, Sam Shepard and Jackie Jill found out that they were brother and sister.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you do that for? Obviously you've got your main storyline. That's a given.
Right.
But then you've got your B stories, your C stories.
Right.
And do you take the same approach with that, or how do you introduce, or when do those come into play?
I do, and sometimes it's interesting because as you're writing and as you're really hearing these voices, that a character will ask a question. Oh boy, do I address that? Do I go back and no, you're not allowed to answer that question? What happens? Where does that go? Because it's a worthwhile question, or it's a worthwhile observation or a worthwhile statement that could change this.
Sure.
And so then sometimes it's like, okay, great. So here's a note here and here and here, and then realizing I've gotten so far away. Is there a way to salvage this little, branch of the story, or no? Does this become a 3-act? Does this become a 2-hour and 45-minute play? Or do I prune?
Right.
Painfully to get back there. But what I want to do, and often, as it's encouraged, overwrite. Just write everything.
Mm-hmm. And
then go back and make those cuts, whether it is complete characters. No, they don't serve this story. Right. So I tend to put up whatever, here's just a subject that they would broach. Boom, I'm going to put that up there.
So you basically never tell your characters, shut up. I don't stop introducing that. You're ruining things.
Yeah.
Right. You brought up your wife knows that you work on deadlines. Now, is that deadlines for a complete finished project, or is that deadlines just for the first draft? And
for
then
a draft. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go.
Well, I was saying that one of the things with the Powerhouse program, which is just exemplary because they are such champions of process, and out of each season, I don't know, the countless shows in various parts of the process where sometimes people will show up like, I have half the script done and I'm going to spend the next 3 days working with the cast and finishing it.
Right.
But they really just celebrate that process. And so for me, I'm like, yes, I want to draft it. I want to hear it. And I want to spend 3 days with a company of actors to see what it needs to be, to see if from this draft, what, are these questions asked? They also at Powerhouse do like a round table where playwrights can ask questions.
Right.
Does this relationship, is it truthful? Is it fully formed when they say this? Do you believe it? Do you have enough information about this in order to put stakes into it?
So when you're working, so when you get that, when you've started that, you're going back and forth, the questions are being answered. Are you going home and doing rewrites that night and coming back the next day, or what's that?
Yeah. So, each company kind of gets to make up their own process. For what I wanted to do was, I think we got there on a Friday, just did a full table read and questions. And then went in Saturday and started working the script, and then took Saturday afternoon, gave the actors Saturday afternoon off.
Okay.
And I did rewrites, and then went in Sunday with those new pages, those adjustments, and sometimes like here's a brand new scene. I want to slip in and see what that does. So yeah, you really get to choose how you want to spend your time.
How open were they when you come in with new scenes? Were they like, oh, gosh darn it, come on, man, I already made my choices?
It is, and something that I'm very protective of, and especially the further we get into rehearsal, I'm like, I have an adjustment I want to make, and most of the time, and I say most because I don't like to use always, but I can't think of a time where they were like, this really messes me up. That most of the time, like, oh, that works, thank you. And then so with like a new scene, especially the workshop part, they were very open to it. If it were a week before opening and I was like, here's a new scene,
Fair enough.
very different story.
Right. Because you guys open Monday.
We have previews Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then open on Friday.
Okay. So everything's locked and loaded at this point. There's no change. No more changes are coming.
Like I am in the production office at the theater. We finished up. We began tech yesterday at noon till 10, and then came in today noon to 6. So yeah, everything is locked and loaded. All the elements are there. No more foreseeable changes at all with the script, and to let it live, give it away.
Sure. What's the more from a playwriting perspective? I mean, you're directing as well, so maybe that's not a fair question. Because I'm just curious what the design aspects are, what the collaboration from the other aspects of people that you're working with, as far as the vision of what you have, or did you find new discoveries working with the rest of the crew, saying, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing! I didn't even take that. I didn't envision that."
Yeah, I love working with designers. I love having production meetings. The three of the designers have relationships with, have collaborated on many projects, and I rely on not just design, but rely on questions.
Sure.
Rely on, so you're saying this, how do you see that visually? And as I advise, yes, my directing students, look to your experts. That your lighting designer, your scenic designer, costume, sound, these are your experts. Rely on them to ask questions, rely on them to challenge you. Mm-hmm. And through that, I find that you either get clarity, or you come back and say, oh, yeah, I need to rethink that. Either way, that's good, and not not being scared of not being the smartest person in the room. And here's the problem. I don't know how to resolve this. I don't know how, I write and direct from a sensual storytelling that I don't like to overproduce. Some say minimalism, but it's not. I feel like it's just, I don't want any fat. Whatever we need, that's what we're going to do, but we're not going to have more than we need to tell the story. So from that, when a designer says, I need this, okay, let's talk about it. But often finding that what a designer sees and how a designer sees a problem and attacks a problem.
Yeah. I have from a producing standpoint, I take that same approach. That's what I love about, in the intro, I talked about Play Noir. So we did 7 seasons of it from 2012 to 2018. And the great thing about noir, from a stage perspective, is it lends itself to simplicity. It doesn't take a lot. You have a bar and 3 stools, you're in a bar. You have a desk and a chair, you're in the detective office. You put a lamppost, you're on the corner. It's great.
Yeah.
And then, since it's a series of one acts, cast members would have the opportunity to perform in 2 pieces and direct another. And sometimes I need this. I'm like, okay, tell me why. If you can justify it,
right, I'm
open to it. But otherwise, I'm not going to spend the money on it. You better have a good reason for having this.
Yeah.
You know?
Because I'm completely with you. And I think that all too often what theater does best is denied, being in the film world as well. Film can do things that theater can't, but theater also can do things that film can't.
100%, yeah.
And to have that lamppost there, to then have your actors come in, it becomes magic. It really does. And to have an audience transported, not because you were able to shoot on location, but transported because of what the actors doing, the story that they're telling. For me, that's the magic.
Sure.
It is not the wowing of all of the design concepts of it. It's how do we constantly serve the story. That is my constant question always.
Sure. Yeah, well, no, I mean, look, I love walking into a theater and like, oh my gosh, I'm not in a theater right now. I'm in this apartment. That's great. However, on the other hand, I also appreciate the suspension of disbelief and letting the audience fill in the rest of the scenario, or not the scenario, the rest of the scenery.
Yeah.
You know, where actually is this bar? What is the rest of this detective's office look like? If sticking with the noir trope, or whatever. It's like there's so much more. It's kind of like I guess it's no different than when you're reading the play.
Right.
If you keep it simple, then it is, without going elaborate. So interesting.
Well, I think, there's something, they used to make these, and I think they were called Academy Award radio plays. This is going back. And where they would come in and do the radio play of the Maltese Falcon.
Right.
And long before I'd ever seen the Maltese Falcon, I listened to this tape. And I could see it.
Mm-hmm.
Our imaginations are so incredibly powerful. We don't have the opportunity as much to use them anymore. But it's intact. And I think when the audience has that opportunity, the play becomes very personal to them. Yeah. There's a playwright, Stephen that writes in this way, and there's one of his plays, Mary's Wedding, beautiful play, in which there's a horse that is talked about throughout, it's an integral part. And he was talking about how many times an audience member has come up to him after a performance and has said, I love that you made the horse a chestnut because that's the kind of horse I grew up with. And he'll remind them, I never say the color of the horse. You did that. And that's when it becomes very personal for that audience member. That's what I want to provide, that opportunity.
That's brilliant. I want to go back to you when we were talking about, you were talking about Durang, and I think David Crawford as well, when we were talking about eliminating things, and you were the abortionist, if you will. Do you think that, do you think playwrights can do that on their own, or do you think it takes an outside eye to realize that it's time to kill your darlings?
I think certain playwrights can. Well, or perhaps even I think all playwrights can. I think that sometimes it is a bit more difficult, that love for this character, or even when talking about earlier of this vision. I often think of it like when we're doing crosswords and like we're stuck on a word, and someone else will look at it and like, well, they're talking about the noun version. Oh, right. That sometimes just that smallest difference of a point of view can open up something, because we've been just on this track that it can be hard to step out of, and often have then found, in working with playwrights, like, yeah, I'm not sure if this works. Oh, of course, it just never occurred to me. And especially those playwrights that realize we're collaborating, and realizing that the director, what I will often talk about, I love this play as much as you do, and I know that may be difficult for you to believe because you wrote it, but I love it as much as you do, and I'm wanting to serve it, and I don't know if this serves it. And want to put that in your ear, want you to think about it. And so many times, yes, coming back and saying, you know what, yeah, it doesn't serve it. Okay, then let's make the change.
So from a playwriting perspective, with your piece right now, were there any challenges that you had to overcome as a playwright, or did everything just kind of fall into place?
No, I mean, I think one, well, it's interesting writing about subject matter that many people are unaware of, which is also something I love. I love going to see a piece of theater where I leave going, I didn't know that was a thing.
And feel free to share that. I mean, we're not giving anything away because you'll have it be in previews. So if there, feel free to talk about.
But it goes into a lot about evangelism, and there are terms, and even the actors are like, what does this mean? Oh, right. And so some of those challenges were assuming too much that people understood, whether it was a reference to something, a tradition, a ritual, and realizing, oh, the audience has no concept of what that is. And that was part of wanting to have a character that in many ways serves as an audience member. And it's not a spoiler because it happens in the second scene. That a character who grew up evangelical and then loses her memory based on from an accident, from an event that happens that wipes all memory of that faith. And so then she's the one that gets to ask these questions. I don't understand what this ritual is. I don't understand many of these things. And so that was the challenge for me, and the encouragement from workshopping with actors, from hearing feedback from audiences, that I didn't go with you when this was discussed, because I got very lost, whether it was being lost in scripture, being lost in reference to scripture or ritual or relationships that exist in the evangelical life. And sometimes just not that question of, do people really do that from an actor standpoint, and having to say, oh yes, I can give you one account after the other of how true this statement that you're saying is.
Do you find that do you find that that device of adding that character, for lack of a better term of device, worked better than just adding context to the dialogue?
Yes, because the seed of this was I have long wanted to have a discussion about evangelism, about Christian conservatism, but one, not wanting it to be just a debate. And I read, I don't know how many years ago, read this story about a married couple, in which she suffered a head injury and their 20-year marriage was erased.
Mm.
And so I then thought, what would happen to an adult if all dogma, if shame, guilt were completely removed, and having these established relationships, would those relationships survive?
Mm.
And what kind of questions that as children we ask, and we are provided often with very simple answers revolving around faith, of then as an adult, that doesn't work. Just the idea of, how did all of the animals of all of the earth fit on a boat? Well, faith. That doesn't work anymore for me. And so to have this, intelligent, curious adult saying, I'm going to continue asking questions.
Sure.
And how then, do those relationships fall apart? Or are those relationships based on faith alone, that shared faith? And so that began, once that idea of what would happen if that were removed, then it was simply, who do I surround this person with? And so okay, her husband, who else do I surround this person with? And okay, her father. And at one point it was mother and father. And then I was like, there has to be a crisis of faith that they experienced and chose two different paths. And that's when I was like, okay, so the mother. There was a crisis of faith with the mother. And the father took this path and the daughter took this path. And as people do. And so then exploring those choices. So then it really just became about, who do I surround her with?
I'm not going to assume it was, but assuming this is sensitive subject matter for the people that you're collaborating with, what was that like? Did you get pushback? Were there questions that came up with your actors that might have kind of ignited other questions or other issues? And then how did you approach that? It was like, no, that's not the story I'm telling. I like that. Let's explore that, and maybe we can add elements into that.
I think that for me, and especially when dealing with sensitive subject matter, which we often produce.
And we should.
Yeah. And really talking about these areas of gray that we live in, which are often incredibly complex and nuanced, and finding collaborators who were generous enough that I do not want, and even from writing character breakdowns, that I don't want to attract actors that are going to think, here seems like a good play to make fun of. No, don't want to do that. These characters are going to be written with great integrity. I disagree with them, but they're going to be written with great integrity. These are not monsters. These are people that have certain beliefs, that hold certain beliefs. And so then wanting actors that came in with those choices that showed full human beings grappling with their identity, their faith, of what they knew from a child, growing up in that. And so there wasn't pushback. There was great information in terms of um, you know, someone very unfamiliar, like, well, I grew up Catholic. I'm not familiar with evangelism at all. And, looking around my family home, this was the iconography we had up. And then talking about evangelical homes and the iconography that exists there. And then also encouraging, here's homework. Homework is watching this documentary, and to get an insight into this world. And so, yeah, there's no pushback, and I think that's just from knowing we're going to handle this with great generosity. Yeah.
No, I think that that's admirable because I don't think that's always the case. It's always, I think it's sometimes approached as caricatures, and that they, you don't. It's more of like let's poke fun rather than really explore this. So you were talking about that, and there was somebody I once knew. I think this was more coming from an addiction place or homelessness, and her partner at the time reacted a certain way, a little bit of aggressive, and she had to correct him. And she's like, "Hey, stop it.
Mm-hmm.
That's somebody's child."
Yeah.
And we kind of forget that no matter what the beliefs are, and you can kind of, I don't know what the right word is, make them a little bit lesser, dehumanize is, I think, is the right word. And and you have to remember that person has parents, that is somebody's child, that somebody, that you kind of have to remember, their upbringing and stuff like that.
Well, and
where they came from.
Yeah, and where they came from, which I think is such an important part. We often judge based on what we see in front of us. There was a story, New York Magazine, something that years ago, a woman on a train who was a therapist, that's what she did for a living, and saw this woman berating her child and just thought this is awful behavior. And after a while, finally got tired of it and said, I'm going to confront this woman. She should not be treating her child this way. And as she got up to confront this woman, this little old lady grabbed the mother's hand and asked, have you had a hard day? And the woman just started weeping. And the writer of the article, who was this therapist, talked about, this is what I do for a living. And I didn't think to offer any grace. I simply looked at what was right in front of me and didn't think about where she was coming from at all. And it's not about excusing the behavior, but it is simply about extending a bit of grace and asking, have you had a hard day? And what that can do.
It's funny. I want to say this is like within the last maybe month. That's the second time that word's come into my ear. That being said, the first time within, maybe, like I said, this might have been this month. I don't remember the last time I heard that word. Which means I think it's a value, or what's the other term that we've forgotten about. It's been lost. It's what's the opposite of sin? There's sinning, and then there's the virtue. It's a virtue we don't have anymore. I think we've lost that. Yeah,
and it's it's an important one for all of us. As we share this space together.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping. I'm hoping that Canaan Unremembered has that, just because we've talked about it. So I'm assuming it does.
Yeah.
And I hope that it enlightens your audience. So I really hope that I'm sure it'll be a successful production. What are you working on right now? Outside of this, obviously, are you writing anything else, or?
I have sticky notes. Starting, it's and with like great exuberance. Like, okay, no, I'm going to put up some notes. Want to hold them there.
Are those notes just ideas, or are they actually the scenes that you were speaking kind of the same thing earlier?
Some okay. Will be even like I see these three characters. I see three siblings. I see them in this place. And then others are like, I want to see these people here. I don't know what they do yet, but I want to view these people. And then what's rolling around in my brain is like, what do they do? What happens? Because I like them so much, but they aren't moving yet. So that's, once, this is done, I will decide, okay, so here's what I want to explore.
What do those character post-it notes look like? How much information is on that? When you say I have these are the people, I don't know what to do. So, but you know them.
Yeah.
How much information is on that character post-it?
Often it is if there's a relationship between one or two of them. Often looking at trying to unearth the facts of this person. Is what is their occupation? Where are they from? Where are we now? What are their, sometimes a simple thing, are there addictions? Are there struggles that they're fighting? And then from that kind of fact sheet versus, I don't do a lot of like an emotional sheet. What are the facts of this character that then might, I often talk to my students about when writing breakdowns to also extend grace. And there was a character a few years ago that some might call dumb, some might call violent. And like the breakdown became that this character dropped out of high school in his sophomore year to work on his father's catfish farm, has been arrested twice for domestic violence, and his mother died when he was 6. Okay, you start to see a story there. Not calling him stupid, not calling him not making judgments about.
Sure.
Here are the facts of this character. And so often, what might happen, another fact will occur, and I'm going to write that. Here's another fact about this person. So sometimes they read, like a last scene and, perpetrated this, but really just looking at what are the facts that make up this life.
We're going to wrap this up, and now we're going to. Yeah. I was going to, but no, because I have a series of questions that I always end with. But we've got another. So, do you write out of order then? I'm hearing these things. So
yeah, I do. I absolutely. Because sometimes there's I know we get to resolution here. I don't know how.
So you take a talking heads approach.
Yes.
How did I get here? How did we get here?
Absolutely. And there was even talk about glorious process. That there was a reading I went to a while back where in the middle of the reading the playwright just stood up and said, "Here's what happens in this scene. Don't have it." But here's what happens. We're going to move to the next scene.
God bless him.
Beautiful.
Why not?
Beautiful.
Okay. All right. Where can people find your work?
Right now in Long Island City.
Okay.
That after it would close. Yeah, not sure where I'll put it after that.
That's what I was going to ask. What's your intention after this? Are you going to publish it, or are you going to?
They're from Powerhouse. There've been a couple people that have reached out of just saying, hey, I read this. It sounds interesting. Can you send me a copy? Sure.
Okay.
I think that always, whether it's from a producing standpoint, a writing standpoint, that you want to create a full life.
Sure.
That it's not, I want to create something for a month or 6 weeks.
Right.
And so then the hope that, there is a life beyond, and unsure what that is.
Sure. Okay. And final question, are you on the socials?
Yes. Judson Jones on Instagram. I think the same on Facebook. Not on X, and I think I have a Discord, but I haven't understood. My daughter keeps trying to help me with Discord, and I don't fully get it, but I know it's there.
Yeah, likewise. Well, Judson Jones, I wish you the best success with this production. We will definitely include link below for tickets, and thank you for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
Hey, James, this has been thrilling. I want to talk more with you. Absolutely wonderful.
Wonderful. I look forward to doing this again. So thank you for coming on.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. Don't forget, submit your one-act film noir style one-act to info@punkmonkeyproductions.com or visit for guidelines www.punkmonkeyproductions.com for more information. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, until we see each other again, keep writing.